get started. Hey guys, aloha, aloha everyone. I'm Ronak, good afternoon. Thanks for coming here today to join our session. Before I get a head start, I wanted to understand what everyone, just to have the sense of the audience. How many of you guys have built a Lightning community in past? Just show of hands. Okay, that's
awesome.
Good. That's awesome. How many of you guys have worked on either creating a Lightning web component on communities or on Lightning experience? Okay, that's great. Amazing. One more last question is, how many of you guys have worked on React Angular and used Lightning Container to get it on Salesforce Platform? All right, okay, this is great because I saw some of them have not raised their hands, but I guess the point here today is the main goal of this session is how could you use LWC and Lightning Container inside Salesforce community to build a very rich customer experience on our community platform, right? So myself, I'm Ronak Shah. I've been at Salesforce for 7 years. I manage the community's runtime team on the DXP world in the community's cloud. We have Keenan and Shelby, who are going to quickly introduce themselves as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Kenan. I also work on communities runtime and love LWC, so.
Yeah, Shelby Hubick. I'm a Canadian and a principal architect here on the community cloud. I've been at Salesforce for 9 years, building rich branded experiences for that entire time. I'm actually not going to be talking. These guys are going to take everything out. I'm just here for moral support, maybe some comedy, and helping answer any Q&A, which we'll have a big chunk at the end of this session.
Cool.
AKA ask us really hard questions so he can answer them.
So I'll let these guys take it on.
Okay. Cool. So forward-looking statement. I'm sure pretty much you guys have seen this slide many times, a zillion times. Is less, I would say. But the main idea here is please make your purchasing decision based on what's available on our platform as of today. Though most of the things we are going to be covering today, which is LWC and LCC on the Salesforce Community Cloud, is already GA as of summer 19 release. So you guys already have it to play. But we might be talking about a few things which are still in our pipeline. So just keep that in mind while making a call. The agenda for today is we've divided the presentation into two halves. One is we're going to go over the Lightning web components for close to 10 minutes, and then we're going to switch to Lightning Container. After that, we have a very awesome demo, which is basically integrating LWC, LCC, Aura, everything into one on the Salesforce community, and how they basically talk to each other and everything in one demo. We have gone through a lot of Stack Exchange posts where people have been asking questions around LCC, how we could talk to LWC, how LWC can talk to Aura, and everything together. So we have tied everything together for an awesome demo today. So that's one thing. Other thing is, all right, Keenan, so could you explain me more about what a Lightning web component is?
Yeah, so as you guys all know, as of this, who watched the keynote this morning? All right, so we open source LWC. This is awesome. This is like tremendous stuff. And so some background for those that don't know. So there's this thing called the World Wide Web Consortium. This is called W3C. Actually, this is the first time I actually know what it stands for, W3C. No, I'm kidding. These guys it's a group basically, and they make the standards for the web. Their motive was when they came in and they were like, hey, like all these developers, they're building on the web. They're using React, they're using Angular, they're using Vue. There's like 10 different libraries and frameworks out there that really, what do they all do? They do the same thing. Like you're just building components, making it easier to build web apps. So what they decided to do is they wanted to make a standard, and they wanted to implement this on the browser level. So they built this thing called web components. And these are things that are like Shadow DOM, custom elements, HTML templates. These things were built so they become standardized and that they run at the browser level. What we've done at Salesforce is we've basically made an implementation slightly on top of that. While it does use everything underneath the hood, we've added some stuff to make it easier for you guys to use these standards.
This is great. So could you explain us some of the benefits of using LWC?
Yeah, so some of the benefits. The primary benefit that I want to really sell to you guys, it is so much easier to develop and test with LWC. It's built using standards. That means all the stuff you guys learn here can work in other areas. And so you can really show your skills off to other different frameworks and start implementing these across the board. It uses the latest JavaScript capabilities, ES6+, and this is huge because who likes arrow functions? Who likes deconstruction? That is just awesome stuff to have at your power, and so you can build amazing things with it. It also supports external testing tools. So now we're not so closed off from the rest of the world. We can use Jest, which is Facebook's testing framework, unit testing framework for JavaScript. And so this is all great and all, but business people ask us, okay, why do I even want to move to LWC? Like, what's the point? There's huge performance gains. And why? Well, remember how I said that it's implemented at the browser level? What does this mean? First thing, the framework, way smaller. So that means it takes way less network resources to pull it down. Faster, loads faster. Next thing, it's all offloaded to the browser. So a lot of that stuff's running natively on the browser, which makes it a lot faster. Finally, the main selling point is it works with Salesforce, right? You can use Lightning Data Service. You can get all of your data in LWC. You can call Apex and so forth. And you can use SLDS and all the stuff works in all the builders and cool stuff like that. Finally, this is a little forward-looking. We are fully investing into this. So in the next coming time, we are going to be building out a full LWC-based platform, and this is the first step towards that. So.
Great, this is good, Keenan. So based on our developer productivity, right? Like what's the uniformity? Do they have to do anything different for exposing this component in our communities?
Yeah, so it is slightly, so the first thing, let's backtrack a little bit. So how do you even install an LWC into your community? So you guys probably have worked with like developer council and all that with like for Aura and stuff. We've kind of taken, it's a little bit different approach. So we want you guys to use your local editors. We prefer you guys to use Visual Studio Code because we have a lot of plugins and stuff that help with that. But you can use Sublime, you can use VI, Emacs, those are awesome tools. And you develop your LWC in your local editor, and then you're gonna push it up via SFDX, which is our CLI. I could spend like 2 hours talking about that, but I'm not gonna go dive deep into that. You can also use Workbench, zip up your package, and then just deploy it that way. And finally, you just drag and drop your LWC into your community, and it's that easy.
Awesome, this is great. So could you explain how is the structure of Aura different from LWC?
Right, so there's kind of like, you can build two different kind of components in LWC, right? You can build your UI component, which is what your users sees and your customers sees, or you can build a service component, which is basically where you have all your shared logic and library. So your UI component consists of basically 3 main files. It's your HTML file, which is what actually views on the page and renders, and your DOM, essentially. Your JavaScript file, which is all your logic, and your metadata configuration file, which has like, kind of describes the component, whether it's in this builder and et cetera. And then the service component obviously just need the JavaScript file because that's all your shared logic, and then your metadata to expose it out to other things if you need it.
This is good. So in Aura, we had something called .design file, which was the property panel editor. How is it, what's there in this one, in LWC?
Right, so in LWC, we have this thing called the metadata configuration file, the js-meta.xml, which is basically kind of like your design file. So to expose it to communities, we basically do, the first thing you're gonna start off with, there's this thing called targets. And so you're gonna specify the target lightning community __ page. What this tells us is like, hey, I want this component to show up in Community Builder. When you have this set up, then it's like, hey, well, I wanna expose some of my attributes out so that like the admins and stuff can configure it easily. Or like a developer, I can just quickly modify that component and use it elsewhere. So then you're gonna specify another target called lightning community __ default. And in this target, you're gonna specify target configs, and this is where you list out all your properties of what you wanna expose out to the community builder. So that when that property panel shows up, you can change different things.
Got it. So if we need to add more property, it would go inside lightning community __ default, like adding more property.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, that's great. So we covered what is LWC, what's benefit of LWC, how could you expose it to Lightning community, how could you add multiple design attributes. Now, could you tell us like the real power of Salesforce? How could I connect back to platform?
Right, so at the end of the day, Salesforce, the real power we have is we want that data. We have all that business data, and LWC needs to connect back to that. These are the I'll give you a kind of a list of like how you can connect back. The simplest, most easiest way to start off, create a POC, is using our Lightning-based components. And this is our component library. It's built with Lightning Data Service, and basically it kind of like hides all that, like how it connects back and all the API stuff. So you can basically create forms via the Lightning record form or edit form, and it's pretty easy to use, really easy. Like when I say easy, just put into HTML that. The next thing is the wire service. So we expose out a lot of functions, basically kind of abstracts a little bit of the kind of API, what happens underneath the hood, like the HTTP requests and all that stuff. But basically, we expose this out so you can perform kind of more customization. If you have some like specific logic that you want to use the data and like render something really specific, this is what you would use that for. And finally, like we all know, like we all have our already existing Apex triggers and stuff, and we use those, and we can call those directly from LWC, which is really nice.
It's great.
Whoops. So that was awesome, right? I mean, LWC is amazing, and that is really great, but when I came to Salesforce, I was actually a React developer, and I love React still to this day. And when I come in, I have so many of my personal projects that I really want to like bring into Salesforce quickly, where there's just so many lines of code that I would need to convert to LWC. So this is a thing called LCC. Can you explain more what this is and how I do that?
So LCC is basically Lightning Container Component. It's basically an Aura component, which is out there. As I said, it's a GA product. You could basically, any of you guys who have already worked on a React or a third-party JavaScript app, and you want to bring it to Salesforce on a Lightning communities, right? So basically, the best way to go about is using LCC, which is Lightning Container Component. So basically, iframe, all the CSP policy, everything is kind of inbuilt. You can also leverage the LDS, the APIs, that's already out of the box that comes with Lightning Container Component itself, right? So it's basically, as I said, it's an Aura component. You can easily add you can easily implement the available for all page types in it, and then drag and drop from your community palette inside the community builder.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. But like, I still don't, like, many of you are probably asking, okay, but what is the true benefit? Like, why wouldn't I just go to LWC, and why would I use LCC in this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, right? A lot of our developers out there, a lot of our ecosystem out there, they're kind of wondering how can we basically reuse something that you guys have already built, right? You don't want to create a LWC component from scratch. Maybe you don't want to write an Aura component from scratch, and you don't want to build the entire application that you guys have already created in one of like React, Vue, Angular, any of the third-party JavaScript application, right? So this is the key. With that, you can get the reusability. Other things are, you can also kind of hook it with your SLDS styling system, right? You can use our own styling system, or you can have your own CSS framework, hook it to your React app, and then port it to Salesforce Platform. That's another thing. One of the other things, as I mentioned earlier, was you get the power of platform, right? So you can basically talk to even your LWC component. You can even talk to your a record. Like there are APIs that are there that you can kind of leverage and directly connect to the platform, right? So that's one of the major benefit of using LCC.
Yeah, so that's awesome. But wait, let's take a step back a little bit. We just mentioned React. We just mentioned Angular. Now we're mentioning, okay, how do we like create this package, and all of a sudden, where does this even go? Like, how does it work?
So to that, right? So at Salesforce, developer productivity is kind of the number one. We kind of make sure that we try to keep it as uniform as we can, right? Similar to what we had in LWC, and pretty much the same you would have seen across the board when you would have used Visual Force or Apex Controller. So first thing is very simple. You guys have your own app that is in Angular React, right? That's the first step. The second step is creating a package out of it, which is using Webpack or something to basically create a single folder, zip it. Once you have the zip folder ready, upload it using the static resources to Salesforce Platform, and then you basically go inside Developer Console, which you guys are familiar, and then you kind of point it to the static resource you just uploaded to kind of put it to the communities. Just to show you an example, this is basically a component that I've created. Keep in mind that it has a Lightning container Aura component out there, but as I said, you can put the Lightning container even in Aura component or even in Aura application, doesn't matter. In this case, since we need to expose it to the community builder, we are implementing force community available for all page types. That way it will show up inside the component palette under the custom component section. Source is the one that's very important here. So as you guys uploaded a static resource, you point the static, you point it to the path, and then you point it to the index.html. And and then just drag and drop the component inside Community Builder, and your app is right there.
So this is great and all, but remember, we're still driving to the point, how do we connect this back to Salesforce data if we're using like an iframe inside and then React app running?
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned earlier as well. Like with the component itself, a lot of things comes out of the box. So one of the major thing is the messaging, right? Like as I mentioned a couple of times earlier, because it's very important. Like messaging is something that you can kind of talk between like once you have multiple Lightning containers on the page, like multiple LCC components on the page, you can interact with one another using the messaging API that's already provided. You can also talk to Apex controller underneath the hood. You guys would have already created Apex controller on platform. So you want to connect your LCC directly to Apex and then reuse the data and show it on your application, right? So that's another thing. We also kind of provide the JS Force API through which you can connect to different other APIs, REST APIs, and underneath the hood called the API metadata, ADS. Everything is basically coming out of the box for free. Other important thing, as I mentioned earlier, was the SLDS style system. So we have a lot of NPM modules out there that you guys can leverage, put it inside your React app while you're bundling up stuff, so that you can basically pull the NPM package out there to your package folder and upload it to static resource and use that inside your application out of box. So Keenan, so while you were working on building the demo and other stuff, right, what are some of the tips that you would like to give to our developers out here?
Yeah, so when I was building out the demo and using LCC, these are kind of the tips I've come up with, and also kind of what we track. We follow you guys on Stack Exchange. We see what issues you guys run into. So the first thing is LCC sometimes doesn't interact well with Builder. So I would recommend always to test when you click on Preview and then you go like Authenticated User in Communities, like a separate tab, or Guest User if you want to use that. Or if you have your own community that you're playing around with, you can test on the published site. The next thing is, unfortunately, Salesforce Platform has a limit of 5 megabytes per static resource. This is something we can't control, but my recommendation is for you is if you guys start hitting that limit, move all of your assets to other static resources in Salesforce or to other servers like AWS, GCP. And in our demo, I actually moved a couple of my assets out to AWS, which I'm hooking up through that.
Just taking a break there, has anyone faced this issue in past before? Because we have seen a lot of posts around this. Anyone in the crowd who has faced this?
Okay, yeah. So the final thing is, do not use absolute URLs in your index.html. A lot of web and framework bundlers will actually put the absolute URL. This doesn't actually work well with us because your code actually doesn't live in like a community domain, it actually lives on Salesforce Platform. So then we actually do some magic to actually get your code to render in that iframe. So instead, you need to use a relative URL. So this means putting a ./yes, like ./bundle. And so this way, all of your static resource code will get loaded in.
Awesome. All right, so enough of theory. We're going to jump straight into demo and kind of show you guys how everything is interacting with one another. Just a second.
Yeah, so background. So we have this use case. We call it e-bikes. They're a manufacturing company, and they sell bikes. And they want to create an awesome digital experience and just really sell their bikes well, and so that their customers know what they're buying into. So we've created this demo to really showcase that. And as you can see, you can demo. But before we start off with that, let's jump into the Salesforce setup. So when you push your LWC components up, and you're going to see, and Aura, obviously, you're going to see all your components listed here, right? And you're going to see the types that are listed here. This will just verify that you've done it correctly and you've pushed it up and that it's existing on the Salesforce platform. So this is always good to double check when you push via SFDX or Workbench. The next thing is, okay, so let's see this in community context. Let's just refresh that page. So while the builder opens up, when you click on the components panel, you're going to see all your components, or actually, can you just click on the components so they can see the custom components? Yeah, right there. Yeah, so when you upload your component up, you're going to see all of your custom components listed here. And I've listed out, like, this is not, like, we don't add, like, LWC, like, parentheses. We don't actually add that. I just listed out so you guys know that these are LWC components. I've changed the labels on them. So when you see that, then you just drag and drop, right, your component on. That's pretty standard. The next thing is I've exposed a lot of these attributes out, and the reason you want to do this is, again, we want to reuse components. We don't want to build the same thing over and over and over again. So I've exposed a bunch of attributes out where basically where does it pull the video from? In this example, the top one, it's pulling the video from AWS. That's where the video is hosted on an S3 server. You can expose out a bunch of titles, CSS, etc. So that really, but then I can use the same component below. And I can just modify anything I need to modify, and I create that same experience. Simple, right? That's what developers love. We love to reuse stuff. So let's go on to the live site. And that's kind of like the builder preview of it. So let's go on that live site and see. So we have this thing. And you can see this is a tile menu, also custom built. And everything on here is LWC, what you see right now running. And so you can see it's super responsive, right? At the end of the day, this is just normal HTML JavaScript. So anyone can create a responsive app. It's just, you got to do it right. So let's jump into the product explorer. So let's say we're one of the customers of e-bikes, and we want to see what products they're selling. So as you're going to see here, this is all LWC based. Each tile, everything, and you can search, you can filter different things, quick, it's easy. And so this just displays all the products, and everything here is, again, LWC, and they're all interacting with each other using standard DOM events.
And just to keep in mind, this is, there's no mock data here. We're basically pulling everything from the Salesforce object out of the box. So yeah, we're using the API to connect to the LWC component and grabbing everything out of Salesforce Platform.
Right, exactly. And there's different ways, like I said, you can use the wire adapters or you can use Apex. So let's dive into that product. So this is a lot on one page. And I just want to take our time to really understand what is actually happening here. So this is a 3D model of the bike. There are actually a lot of 3D models like out there, and a lot of like frameworks that are built on top and use it. I don't know, has anyone heard of, I think it's pronounced like Babylon? It's built by Microsoft. It's used for 3D modeling on the web. It uses WebGL underneath the hood, actually. So there's a lot of open source stuff out there, and I was just like, re-implementing that in LWC is like, we want to create a POC quickly, and we really want to show that, and a cool POC. So what I did is I took this React app, and there's a React app that calls Babylon, Babylon, I don't know how to actually say it, but, and it calls this underneath the hood and renders this bike, kind of a 3D model of it. And so then what I did is like, okay, but I want to show how this interacts with Salesforce data. So you can actually configure like the colors of the bike. And so on the left, you're going to see this is our standard record detail page. It's pulling data all from Salesforce, right? Standard stuff, standard out-of-the-box component. And on the right, that's your LCC component, the 3D model. On the top, though, is actually a record form component, a custom-built LWC. And also, these buttons here are custom LWC components. And they're all interacting with each other. So when I click like View Seat, for instance, or View Frame, right, it's talking to the LCC component saying, hey, you need to shift over and view this. The next thing to do is let's show how it interacts with data. So let's change the frame color to red, right? Change the frame color to red. But notice how quick instantly changes the red frame color from the record detail component. And this is pulling directly from Salesforce Platform, right? It's all stored at Salesforce. So we can configure anything really, and you can, this is a demo and just showing like, all the cool things you could build basically from that. And this is, again, to reiterate my point, this is running React. And within that React app, it's running this framework called Babylon. And Babylon actually uses WebGL. And WebGL is basically a way to use your graphics card on your computer with web apps. So,
awesome.
Yeah, so pretty cool, right? I really think this is just like an awesome.
Yeah, because I guess the main thing here is, as you mentioned, we're interacting, everything is on the page. We have Aura on the left, We have LCC right there with the 3D model. We have LWC components out there. And every component is talking to one another. So this is basically a complete hybrid model whereby you can kind of have everything talking to one another, including the platform, right? So we wanted to kind of show this. And again, like a lot of things like this particular 3D model with the 4 MB size limit, we had to basically upload it using AWS so that we can got those things also as a part of the demo, because those are some of the questions that are getting asked multiple times by multiple developers, not on the community cloud as well, but also on the Lex front. So this is one of the very important use case. We wanted to show that.
Yeah. And then going forward, so let's say the customer is like, okay, I want to log a case. So we've built a custom record form, and this is using just the Lightning-based components I told you about earlier. It's just a record form, and you can submit the case. But the thing you want to notice is on the right is our record list component. This is standard Aura, and when I create that case, it just automatically updates. And so what this is showing here, it's an LWC component talking directly to an Aura component. It's actually using an Aura application event and et cetera, but you can look at the code more detailedly. And that kind of goes into my second point. All this code is hosted on GitHub. It's all open source, and you can all view the code. You can play around with it. You can copy it. You can create your own e-bikes company. I don't really care. Don't sue me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to add to that, we also have blog posts which are public out there for LWC and LCC. How could you leverage the GitHub repo that Keenan just mentioned, specifically for Communities Cloud, and kind of follow the steps to do the same thing we did as a part of our demo on your end.
Yeah. Okay. So, and let's just go over some of those relevant links to keep track of. Blog posts. I made a blog post of how to interact with kind of what we described today. It's written by me. It's a cool blog post because actually the first part of the blog post kind of really goes in deeper into why you would use LWC and why it's so powerful. The next thing is sample gallery apps, a bunch of apps out there that you can kind of play around with. Trailhead, right, obviously, you've heard this like a million times. And then the GitHub repo, the repo that lives on GitHub. LCC, we have the same thing. We have a blog post out explaining more detailedly of how that interacts and kind of how it interacts with CSP, content security policy. How does that iframe kind of configure to that? And then general, just LCC stuff out there. And the last thing I kind of want to mention and really drive home is like, you guys are Salesforce. You are the people who actually make our ecosystem so great. And so if you have awesome components, post them up, open source them. Put up a PR on this GitHub repo. Yes, we will accept PRs, pull requests. And you can help contribute and really drive that ecosystem forward. And so I think Salesforce realized that while building LWC is we want to build on open standards. So when you go home today, just remember that. And finally, what's next? LWC. I mean, just go out, view. If you don't know what it is, these are more sessions on it, like really dive deeper. I mean, we dive like the basic level. So they dive deeper into what it is. And finally, Community Cloud. Yes, we are Community Cloud, and we have a bunch of cool sessions out there that you can check out to really build those branded digital experience. Because at the end of the day, what companies are looking for is it's the brand. And that's what our users look for, and that's how we make money.
Cool. That's the end of our session. Any
so we've opened it up to Q&A. Anything, throw us. What's up? No, you can put in
Lightning as well.
Yeah. Yeah, could you use the mic? Yeah, I can't.
Can you get a mic or something?
There's a Q&A mic in the center.
So, can you, is it working?
Yeah.
So the scenario is you have two static resources. One static resource is created in React.js. The other one is a jQuery application. So I want the two static resources to talk to one another. So currently we talk through the platform. So, I mean, I know it may not be directly tied to what you're presenting, but in your experience, can the two static resources talk to one another without the platform?
Without the platform, yes, there are ways to do it. So again, it's just an iframe at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So when you have this iframe and another iframe, you can perform messaging across and using the DOM. And then the parent, right? The parent, whatever the parent is, you can communicate via that. And this won't be connected to the platform, right? I'm all talking about UI. So yeah, you can do it. But yeah.
I think the main question is, yeah, sure, you can do it, but the other question is about the security, right? Like the CSV policy, that's where it comes into play, right? Because you're talking between two different iframes. So do you want that to happen? Because you'll have to come up with the use cases. But as he said, like, yeah, sure. I mean, you can have multiple iframes, you can have selectors, selecting both of them and talking to one another. But I guess at one point, the CSV policy is going to come into play as well, because you don't want multiple things to kind of talk to one another if it's not secure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. So scenario that we ran into is we have a Google map on our community, and for various reasons, we can't use like the fancy new Google Map Lightning Web Component that's out of the box because we want to customize the map and do all this cool stuff, right? And we also want to have it inside of our Lightning Web Component that we're building. And so one of my developers said, oh, well, we can just use the container component, but that's Aura based, so we can't stick that inside of our LWC. Is there kind of like, do you know what I'm talking about? And
Yeah.
like a way to like address that or kind of work around it?
You want to take it for a shot?
I'll take it for a shot at it. Yeah, so like you said, yeah, you can't put Aura components within LWC, and LCC is actually an Aura component, as you've said. So it's tough. At that point, I would just recreate the entire, I would just build out the functionality in LWC. So if you're gonna use LWC. But if you don't have the resources to do that, then use an LCC component and just render it in LCC. That's my best advice. There's no really, I don't think there's
Yeah,
really any way around
I think what you were mentioning that you already have a LWC component, right? And you're calling the Lightning Global component, map component inside your LWC, right? And I guess that was throwing a CSV error, I believe, correct?
Well, basically we want some customization around the Google map itself, like customizing colors and stuff, which the default component doesn't really support out of the box. So
I see, yeah. I guess in that case, yeah, you'll have to kind of wrap the base LWC component above your LWC component and then customize everything on top of it to consume it, right? Because I guess using, as you said, that's an anti-pattern. Using Aura inside of LWC is something that we are not recommending because of the performance. That's the whole reason we are moving towards LWC. So I wouldn't say taking that route, and that's not even possible right now on the platform. So I would suggest you customizing your LWC and then using that as your base LWC, like the map-based LWC, because it's already out there in the market as a global component, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly, yeah. It got open source today. So yeah, that's a perfect point.
Go ahead and make
Yes.
those changes. I'm telling
Totally.
you.
Not all
Totally.
Open to it.
All up for open
But
source,
again, it
yes.
requires resources, and not everyone has that resource,
Yeah.
right?
No, that's what I meant. Like use the global component as the base component and derive it on top of it, right? And abstract it out. Yeah. Good catch.
Hi, one question. Like you said, we can call Angular application or React application through this LCC component. There is a question like if Angular is making a call to some web components, web APIs, which is hosted on an external server, how it will work then? Because all these things hosted on a cloud, correct? How that will work? Because you say showing only these static things has to be called, it will work fine. But for dynamic things, it will work or no?
You mean connecting to external data source?
Yes.
Yes, it does have the capability to connect to. So on my slide, I mentioned that as well, that you can also connect to the Salesforce data source, but you can also have a way to connect it to your external data source from your
Right.
LCC.
Except we do have strict CSP policies on that, and you're gonna have to.
But yeah, that's basically betterment for you.
Yeah.
Basically, having those policy out there is basically betterment for you guys.
If the application is already built and we want to call that application, that's what I'm asking.
Correct. That's the reason the use of LCC is perfect, because you already have an application out there ready and you want to connect it to your external data source, I believe. Still use it on the Salesforce platform, right? Yes, that is possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other?
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
I'm kind of new to all this, so if it makes no sense, just tell me. That's it.
No, feel free. Yeah.
So we built costume libraries, right, with React, and we have 10 JavaScript files. So is that something that you can export into LWC as imports, right? Because they are not really applications, as in third-party applications, right? As a React application is more a component, a library that we have built.
So
over
you
the
have
years,
a component library that you want to pull into LWC.
Right, instead of having to rewrite
Right.
all
So there is a way to pull in external scripts in LWC, and you can kind of play around with it. I don't really remember exactly how it directly works, but you can pull in, like, for example, I've seen people pull in like D3 and stuff into LWC. So there is a way to do that. And D3, for those that don't know out there, it's just a really cool visualization framework. So there is a way to do that, yeah. There's probably some documentation online how to pull in those external scripts. If you don't want to do that and it becomes a hassle, then again, use LCC, pull in all your React components into there and use that.
Shelby, do you know of any way, like using Lightning Container for LWC is what the question is.
When I get a question like that, I get your name, and then I'll forward you to the actually LWC. One of them was standing next to me, who is the author of LWC, so he's my go-to for questions like that. But I do believe it is possible.
Yeah, it's definitely, I've done it. Like, I've done external scripts and done external frameworks, and kind of not full frameworks, but full kind of like component stuff to pull in.
Thanks.
Yeah, load script, that's what it's called. Right, return a promise, and then boom.
What was the name, sorry?
Load stream?
It's called load script.
So basic
load script. Yeah, it's called. Yeah, load script and load style.
So that will return a promise.
It's on our online documentation. Look it up. Yeah, that's the best way.
Cool. Thank you.
I think LWC and LCC especially is a really great tool. I'm a fan of the Elm UI language, and I wonder if Elm components would also be possible to be integrated using LCC.
Yeah, definitely possible. We actually have a sample. I think one of our engineers built something in Elm, and we have a sample up on our GitHub that uses Elm and has it in LCC. Does Elm? I'm not an expert in Elm, but is it based on web components? Do you know, like on the standards?
I'm not sure. I just know
okay.
it compiles to JavaScript, and there's at least one wrapper which basically makes it possible to wrap it into a React component.
Okay. So yeah, I doubt they're running on web components, but I was going to say there might be some tricky ways to actually figure out how to use it directly with LWC, but I'm not going to go into that directly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have done a lot of React, and one of the challenges has been to control the parent DOM inside the frame, especially with the back button history. And I was wondering if there's a way, or you've come up to kind of replicate React router or router history, something like that. You can.
So do you want to?
Yeah.
That?
So
that's a good answer to that.
So to that, right? I mean, we have another session tomorrow, which is also going to talk more about Embarcadero and how to use the navigation API and the back button support and everything like that, right? So currently it is supported in Aura. We have the support for the back button and everything in Aura, but from the LWC standpoint, that's still forward-looking. We haven't invested into that yet, but we are looking forward to put in more effort on the navigation and the back button support and all those things that you were mentioning.
But that would be only for LWC. That would still not solve a React inside an iframe.
Right, it won't. So what you would have to do is you have to perform messaging back up to your parent DOM, which is running Aura or LWC, it doesn't matter. And that LWC would then call our Lightning Navigation API and perform all the stuff. So you basically still have to message, right? Yeah. I mean, the iframe is, again, limiting because it's a self-contained.
Yeah. It's like a single-page application itself, right, inside it.
Okay, thank you.
This may be a very specific question, but what is the plan of Lightning Web Components with change data capture and being able to listen to change data capture events directly into Lightning Web Components?
Could you come again, actually?
Yeah. Come
closer to the mic, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, now.
So what I said is with change data capture kind of becoming the way that we're listening for events of data captures, what is the plan for Lightning Web Components to support that natively instead of having to do it through like a trigger and all that stuff?
So you're asking about capturing events
Change data
and
capture is
change and capture events. I thought this was, you're saying it's not natively supported?
You pretty much have to create a wrapper around it and then publish it back.
Oh, you're talking about a wrapper, like an Aura wrapper around, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so currently those, okay, now I see where your question's coming from. So yeah, the LWC DOM, the standard DOM events aren't supported in Aura. So yes, you would have to create an Aura wrapper that captures that DOM event, then triggers another Aura application event or Aura event to go talk to other Aura events. That's what we actually do in some of our
but
demos.
I mean, to your point, yes, we do understand that's a pain. I agree, and it's a pain for us as well. And the platform team, like Diego and all, they are basically coming up with event bus and all this mechanism for LWC, which is basically catering that use case, like how to kind of handle the native DOM event, because LWC is all about native handling, right? So that's going to take care of that use case. And we, on our platform itself, we are making sure, because it's our major use case as well. So it should be out.
So it should be out
soon.
shortly. That's all we're going to say there.
Thanks.
Yeah, we know it's a pain. I have personally ran into those issues, and it's annoying.
Any other questions?
perfect.
Cool.
Right, cool. Thank you, guys.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.